Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. It's 10 o'clock, so we are going to be respectful of people's time and get started here. Welcome to the YST Grant Round 9 webinar. We are excited to be sharing the space with you to talk a bit more about this grant opportunity that is current with us at DLI. So I'm going to share my screen. The first half of this will be information given to you, and then in the second half we'll be doing some Q&A. So we will be sure to answer questions that come up as a result of this presentation. Okay, folks see my screen. Thumbs up from my crew. Okay, but I should say, feel free to put your information in the chat if you want to let people know who you are and where you're calling in from today. Be great to have a sense of that. All right.
All right, so today we will discuss the YST program overall, just kind of give you a glimpse of what our program entails, and then we'll go over the grant overview in terms of what are the grant objectives, goals, and the activities, and then specifics about this grant round 9 application. And from there, we'll go over the timeline of what this grant timeline looks like, when the grants will close, as well as when we will anticipate doing announcements and the grant period begins. And then at the end, as Joe said, we'll start with Q&A.
So just so folks know, we are recording this session. It will be posted after this meeting concludes on our website along with a transcription. So getting into YST in general, just so everyone kind of has a grounding or an overview in YST. Youth Skills Training Program is really about creating partnerships between folks in industry, local industry, and folks in education. It has been developed in a way that allows us here at DLI to hold two emphases. One is the student's experience, their ability to do meaningful career exploration, make progress toward graduation, and really get a sense of where they're going by getting their hands into the work in their industry. And the other emphasis that we're able to hold is supporting our local businesses, right? Helping them to develop a reliable recruitment source or talent pool with their local schools that helps keep them strong. It helps keep our local economies strong. So as you'll see, in the application, and if you're familiar with YST, it's really about emphasizing both of those two things. And it's aimed at 16 and 17-year-olds who are protected by child labor laws in some of these more hazardous work environments. Through our employer review process, our employer approval process, we are able to look at some equipment in hazardous settings and ease some child labor laws. So that's an important part of our programming as well.
YST is focused on 5 major industry areas that are for the state of Minnesota. These industry areas are considered high wage, high growth, high demand. And it prepares students through exposure activities as well as taking industry specific classes for them to build skills and knowledge within these industry areas, and then providing students opportunities to earn certifications and have paid work experiences and placements within these 5 industry areas. So advanced manufacturing by far is the largest industry area for YST programming, followed by healthcare, and with all of our other industries growing as well. So as you're developing your YST program, you're looking to see, are these the industries that you are planning on providing students experiences and opportunities within?
Okay, so with youth skills training, you really only need one school and one employer in order to create a youth skills training program. But this slide really is to talk about how it very quickly becomes a network within your community. Other employers will find out about it, they'll be excited, they'll want to jump on board. We often see workforce development agencies, chambers of commerce, those folks getting involved in YST programming as well. It just creates a really nice network within the community that benefits schools, students, and employers. You will see in the RFP there's a way to name your partners that you're in collaboration with as you develop your YST program. And that's really what this slide is referring to, is naming those folks.
So YST is a learn and earn model. It really works best when it's a partnership kind of between a school and an employer who can provide these two main kind of chunks of programming to students. One is the classroom instruction piece, where students learn skills, get a chance to take high school classes for credit, to learn those skills. And then the other piece is the paid work experience. So they can take those skills into the workplace, have a chance to practice, show what they know, and develop those skills in a workplace with an employer. So that's why it really works best when it's a partnership between a school and an employer in the community. Then people can really develop those opportunities for youth. This is a little description of the YST program components. There are 4 main components that we look for in YST programming. The biggest one at the top, industry exposure, then education, that's high school courses for high school credit, credentials and certification, and then paid work experience opportunities. For those industry exposure opportunities at the top, this can be like career fairs, field trips to tour local employers, job shadowing, mentoring, teacher externships, all of those things that provide opportunity for youth to explore those different industry areas. And you can see that one's the biggest component, will probably capture the most students at your school. Hopefully all of them can participate in these industry exposure opportunities. Then it kind of filters down to the second component, which is education. There needs to be an opportunity for these students to take high school classes in those industry specific areas. So not core classes, but industry specific courses where they can earn credit. Then maybe a few less students will have the opportunity to earn credentials, or actually will earn those credentials and certificates. So an opportunity for them to earn things like OSHA 10, CNA, any other industry recognized credentials that they can take to their employers and say, these are the skills that I have. And then the final, probably smallest bucket of programming will be for paid work experience. And this is for 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds to be able to have paid work experience with employers in the community in those industry areas.
So one thing to note is that the gatekeeper for paid work is taking at least one class that's industry specific before students are into that paid work experience. That's how we ensure that those employers are getting young people who have developed some knowledge and skill already when they're starting.
Employer engagement is very key in YST programming. Just the way Faye went over the 4 components, getting your employers involved through those 4 components is key. So there could be different ways that you can get employers engaged in your programming through providing tours, so those exposure activities, having them as guest speakers, being able to have them provide job shadowing experiences for your students, but also being able to help guide your curriculum. And so what ways are you involving your employer partners to engage and help prepare your students for the workforce? And there's so many different opportunities for employers to engage within YST programming. And so kind of identifying what are some of the ways that you plan on engaging employers within your programming. And then the biggest part, that final component of paid work, is key in YST programming. And so we do have a YST employer approval process. As you get employers involved with your programming, there are certain requirements that they will need to meet, and that would be partnering with the YST approved school, being able to go through our approval process, which you could find the details on our website, being able to pay the students at least minimum wage. YST paid work experiences will all need to be paid. It's not volunteering or anything like that. And being able to have a system of how do they get the students trained and supervised, and being able to create, and all of that is done to create safe and healthy, meaningful paid work experiences for the students. So this is a part of the process. You don't need to completely need to understand it right now, but just knowing that as you build out a YST program, employers will play a role with the paid work and being able to help them go through the process. We're here for that as well.
Okay, so that was a little background and just information about YST in general and the YST program, but we finally arrived here at the grant portion of the webinar. This slide just gives you some more information about where you can go. The website at the top, if you go there, will give you more information, the RFP, the application. You can take a picture of the QR code if you want with your phones. All of this information that you're seeing on the slide, the timeline, all of that stuff we'll go over a little more as we move on through the webinar. But the QR code, if you guys can grab that now, that would be helpful to you to navigate through the information post-webinar. Okay, if anybody didn't have enough time, just raise your hand, let us know. But hopefully everybody was able to grab that. Okay, this slide shows.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm seeing hands. Here we go. Backwards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was kind of a
good
quick
idea.
one there. Just sit here for another second or two. So
this is our first time using a QR code, so we're very proud of it.
Yes. Hopefully it's working for everyone. And if it's not working, you can contact us after the webinar and we will be able to direct you where to go.
I've also added the link on the chat.
Thanks, Nemo.
Great. Thank you, Nemo.
Good idea.
Forward.
Still seeing some hands. If we need more time, that's fine. But if you have already been able to grab it, if you want to remove your raised hand, then we'll know.
All right.
Great. Thanks. Okay. This talks a little bit about the goals of the YST grant. It was created to help implement and expand YST programs throughout the state of Minnesota. It was created to develop those partnerships. Really, as I was describing before, it works best when it's a partnership between a school and an employer, and also with community support from community organizations, chambers of commerce, things like that. So the more partners that you can bring on board, the better. Another goal is to provide students with those 4 components that we talked about: the industry exposure, classroom instruction, and then safety training or industry recognized credentials, and then paid work experience in those 5 industry areas. Those are high growth, in-demand occupations: advanced manufacturing, agriculture, automotive, healthcare, and IT. Also should train student learners for careers in those occupations so that when students leave the YST program, the hope is that they're matched with an employer. They're seeing a trajectory for themselves in their local communities. All right, so the grant is an annual grant of $1.5 million in funding that's awarded to local partnerships, and partnerships can apply for up to $100,000 in funding. Their performance period for this grant is July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2028. So it's a 2-year performance period. So use those funds over 2 years. We plan usually to award funding to about 15 to 17, sometimes 18 applicants, depending on how much grant funding is requested. Current grant round has, both of them have 17 awardees. It's a competitive grant. We get many more applicants than that, but we try to spread it out as much as possible. Right now, we've had 100 YST grantees since 2017 that have been awarded, and this map shows you the spread of those school districts and partnerships that were awarded across the state. The blue areas are districts that have received YST funding in the past, and the green areas are those new partnerships in this past round 8 grant round. Grant funding is not required to create a YST program, and a lot of you, maybe some of you on this call, are already running a YST program. There are plenty other programs and school districts across the state that are not reflected in this map. Some run YST without grant funding, without ever having grant funding, and some use it as a startup to get their program off the ground and then continue running YST programs.
Okay, so eligibility, and this again is outlined in the RFP that's available online, but just to cover it here together, applicants must be located in the state of Minnesota, include a partnership between at least one school and one employer. They'll be asked to list the schools that are involved, the nonprofits that may be involved, the folks that are involved in your partnerships. And you'll also be asked to list the employers that are going to be employer partners in your programming. And this says here the amount of matching funds provided by each employer, if any. This grant does not require matching funds, but if there are funds that are going to be matched by employers specifically, we ask you to list those. Also, applicants must submit a completed application and the required exhibits by the submission due date. Some of the exhibits may require follow-up from us that can happen after that due date. So there may be some clarification that comes on the exhibits specifically once that date has ended. And then the applicant also must be the fiscal agent or fiscal host for the grant. The applicant must be able to demonstrate the staffing capacity to coordinate the YST program and develop the employer partnerships. That's often something that takes time and dedication to get into community and make sure that you're networking to create those connections. They must also be able to demonstrate the ability to implement programming, so those 4 components that Faye and Nemo have been talking about, that programming that supports youth skills training and that allows them to fulfill the grant activities. Applicants must also be registered and in good standing with the IRS and the Minnesota Secretary of State. One thing to note is that programs that are currently receiving YST grant funding in our last round, so that would have been round 8, the immediately preceding grant round that is ending in June 30th of 2027 are ineligible. You cannot be running 2 concurrent YST grants. Programs who have a current grant round going in round 8 will need to wait to apply until round 10. We have a question in the chat real quick. Private schools and charter schools are eligible to apply, yes. Private charter schools often are nonprofits, so they would have some financial exhibits that they would be required to submit, but we'll get into that.
In terms of grant activities, our program really focuses on those 4 core components. So it would be, what type of industry exposure activities are you providing for your students? What industry-related class offerings do you provide students to be able to take once they've expressed interest in an industry area? And then what credentials, certifications that are industry recognized do your students have the opportunity to earn? And then what type of paid work experiences are you providing your students in that industry area? So what local employers are you creating partnerships with to provide those experiences for your students? And that is a lot of our quantitative data and outcomes are based on those as well. In terms of our qualitative data, we're looking at program sustainability post-grant. It is a 2-year grant, but what ways are you trying to create sustainable programming post-grant period? And then also, what type of partnerships are you creating through your grant period? And also, how are you increasing engagement for students who would not typically have access to these offerings or representation in these type of industries? And so, when we really look at the activities, the core components are our funnel method that we discussed earlier of like, how do you get students involved, interested, engaged, learning, developing the skills, and then having the opportunity to put into practice in paid work experiences.
And fun fact, all of the photos in this PowerPoint are young people that are involved in YST programs. So that's what it can look like on the ground.
In terms of eligible expenses, typically what we see from post grantees is being able to pay for a coordinator to coordinate their YST programming. So that could be a 0.5 of an FTE to help establish your program. We know it takes time to be able to create these partnerships with your local employer partners and community partnerships, the time it takes to plan the activities for exposure. You can also use these funds to market your programs. So that could be updating your website, brochures, banners, informing students as well as parents and local community about your program offerings. You can also use it to recruit employer partners to hosting a luncheon, inviting them to into your schools to be able to know what programs you're offering your students and how your students are prepared for the workforce. You can also use it for the student transportation. So if we're having students go out to different field trips for exposure, you can pay for busing. You can also pay to address barriers for students. So that could be mileage, mileage reimbursement for traveling to work, gas cards, things like that. You can also pay for students' credentials and certifications, as well as supplies and curriculum for your industry-specific classes. There is some teacher professional development that's also allowed. In terms of buying capital expenses, there is a cap because we know the students do need to develop skills, and there's certain equipments that you will need in your classrooms, but you could propose it. There is a cap that we do have for it. And the one thing that the funds cannot be used for is student wages. It really is paid work experiences. So employer partners would need to pay the student wages. We do have in our RFP what the ineligible expenses are. It's not an exhaustive list. So most of the budget proposals will be approved post award. And so during our contracting process, we'll go over things that might not be eligible in terms of DLI processes.
I do see the question in the chat, but we're gonna just save those now for the Q&A because we're super close.
Okay.
So just a little guidance when you're filling out the application. You may apply for one industry area or more than one industry area. Applying in all 5 industry areas, though, is not recommended for newer programs. If you're a more established program or running an academy model or something like that, then that may work where you're applying for all 5 areas. But we highly recommend just starting with one, going strong in that one, or maybe 2 or 3. YST grants cannot be used for child development programming, hospitality, or the construction trades programming. It cannot be used for, CDL only programs or EMT only programs. CDL and EMT can be incorporated into the grant, though. It can be a part of your automotive offering that offers more opportunities and healthcare offerings for EMT. But because those 2 specific CDL and EMT require that the students are 18 to work in those areas, we can't just have only CDL or EMT because this really focuses on 16 and 17-year-olds. Keep sustainability in mind when designing your program. It's a very competitive grant, and it's a 2-year grant. And yes, you can apply again later, but priority is given to first-time grantees. The majority of our grantees are first-time grantees. Some partnerships may have a second or third as they go, but most don't. Best practice is to identify a YST program coordinator, somebody within your organization that is going to head up YST and that has the capacity to do that. It really works best if that person has, part of an FTE or something devoted to YST and not just on top of many, many other duties. So at least have a YST program coordinator identified is very helpful. So these are the exhibits. In addition to the application, there are also several exhibits that we're asking applicants to fill out. They may or may not be applicable to you depending on your organization's designation. For example, school districts are considered municipalities, so they do not need to provide several of the exhibits listed. More information is given in the RFP and the application. So as you're filling those out, just make sure you're looking for if that specific exhibit applies to you, if you need to fill it out. but these are the exhibits that are asked for.
Okay, and then this is our timeline. So January 7th is when it was posted. Questions are due to us. The last questions that we can answer are on January 29th at 4 p.m. After that, we will not be able to answer any further questions. And the questions that we can answer now are general questions. They can't be program-specific questions, but we can answer general questions until then. February 6th at 11:59 p.m. is when they close. February 20th is when our internal review committee, that's made up of agency folks, employers, and school folks in the community who've got familiarity with YST. That's when they'll start to review the applications. In March, the applicants who are selected for further assessment will go through the pre-award risk assessment here. That's an internal process. And then our anticipated award date is April 20th. And then after that announcement is when we would be hosting some informational meetings about the grant contracting process, so that hopefully all of that is completed by July 1st, and when contracts can begin and the grant performance period starts. So those are the nuts and bolts. I see we're at the Q&A part. So I do see 2 questions in the chat. So we'll start with those. And then if people have questions, I think we can just folks can unmute and ask. So the first question in the chat is, can you partner with a school or a school district that is a current YST award recipient? I'm assuming we mean by recipient. Yes, if you are writing an application, you can partner. So schools can partner with multiple employers. Employers can partner with multiple YST schools. Those things are fine. One thing to know is that grant funds in review will be less likely to be awarded if your only partner is already receiving an award. We can't have duplicative award, like someone can't essentially double dip and get funds from one grant and then be a sub-grantee on another grant. That is not a strong application. So we would recommend having more than just that one school or school district that's already involved. Did that answer that question well enough?
And then the next question is it 100,000 a year or 100,000 for the full-time period? So it's 100,000 over a 2-year period. Perfect.
Okay, the next question is, do employers need to have YST employer approval prior to the grant application? No, they don't. When you're listing your employer partners in the grant application, those are employers that you've had some pretty intentional conversations with about, hey, this is what we're thinking of applying for. This is kind of the model and our thoughts and our vision around it. We don't want people listed who it's like, oh, that person would be cool, or that business would be cool. Like people that you've had some intentional conversation about the programming with, but they do not need to be through the YST employer approval process in order to include them in the application. Okay, right. Next question, go ahead.
The next question is, do the participants have to be currently attending high school, recent graduate? Can they be 18? So students do need to be, so the program is targeted 16, 17-year-old students. And so they would need to be high school students, because with industry-specific classes, they need to be able to earn high school credit for those courses. And that is the gatekeeper for paid work experiences.
18-year-olds can participate, but they still need to be working toward graduation. And can the $100,000 be split unequally between the 2 years? Yes. We often see some programs with low spending in the first year because they're kind of prepping, and then heavier in the second. And then we see the inverse of heavy spending in the first year because you're getting stuff ready for your classes. And so we see spending sort of spread out very differently over the lifetime of the grant cycle, depending on where you are in your program development. We do ask that when you're making your budget allocations, your preliminary budget allocations for the application, that you're being realistic about how much money do I need in order to pull this off. So just being thoughtful about that budget as you're designing it is great. Okay, next question. If you choose multiple industries, do you have to have all 5 YST components for each of the selected industries? Yes, if you're choosing multiple industries, so you say you have healthcare, IT, and automotive, you want to be able to map out in your application, these are my exposure opportunities for healthcare, for IT, for automotive, and then moving into these are my industry-specific courses in those 3 industries. These are my credentials in those 3 industries, and then these are my employer partners intended in each of those industries. That would be a strong application. I mean, you could not, but our experiences at the review committee would be like, well, how's this going to work if it's not mapped? So mapping things clearly is quite important.
Yeah, and if you're heavy in one industry area, and you do offer all 4 components in that industry area, and you're thinking, oh, maybe, we offer 2 or 3 components in a different industry area, should I also include that? I would just focus on the one where you offer all 4 industry areas for the grant.
What is the cap for equipment? So for capital equipment expenses, it's 1/3 of the grant. So it's about, if you ask for $100,000, that would be about $30,000 of the grant can go toward capital equipment expenses.
Does the industry related class need to be an advanced class, or can the class be an introductory? So with industry related classes, it's classes that students are able to build knowledge or skills to be able to take into paid work experiences, and they could be introductory. There are people who do have different levels of those class offerings in terms of that industry area. So yes, you can have introductory courses, but it's not like a
Can't be a required
it could be like an intro to
class.
Yeah, it's not a core class. Yep. So it could be like an intro to advanced manufacturing type of class.
So health that's required for graduation would not count in the healthcare track. But like intro to health careers, that's specifically, within the healthcare industry, looking at careers, developing, doing some exposure and skill development, that would count. One thing that doesn't count either is just like a general career seminar. They need to be industry specific courses. Okay, so next question. These are such good questions, you guys. Can you apply for a YST grant to cover transportation costs for students attending training for partnering with an industry partner at their site? Absolutely. Yep, we see buses, gas cards, rideshare could be possible. We know that's a little sometimes trickier to set up, but yes, transportation can absolutely be covered in that situation. Okay, next question. Does asking for a lower amount, $20,000, make your application more competitive? I don't think so. What the review committee is looking for is robust programming and then a budget that reflects the ability to implement that robust programming. Wouldn't recommend writing for a very small amount of money, like say you just need to buy one piece of equipment or a new curriculum. That's not a program, right? So you want to be mapping out what is my program and what is the amount of money that I need. To be honest, we see most people honestly writing for $100,000 or between $70,000 and $100,000. But if that's not what you need, don't write for that much because we do want to be able to spread these funds as well as we can across the state. Okay. Is funding allowed for administrative costs like fiscal management? And if so, is there a cap of 5 to 10%? So we don't really outline administrative costs in YST. We run into it in consortium models where there's multiple schools involved. And so one school is a fiscal agent for multiple schools that are feeding them data and reporting requirements. I think that's something that we could talk about more specifically with that, individual applicant. Our agency does have a policy that I am not quite aware of right now, but that's not a separate cost category in our YST budget breakdown. Does providing a match, cash or in-kind, make your application more competitive? A match isn't required, so it doesn't make it more competitive. One thing that the review committee has commented on before is it's nice to see when there's from a sustainability standpoint, other funding streams coming in, like, Perkins funding and, CTE dollars. And if there's employer matches, that does sort of help illustrate a sustainable model. So it is worth, if it's an employer, we do ask that you outline it, in the employer section. But in the sustainability section, it would be a good thing to outline if you have other funds coming in to support programming.
Can the transportation costs be used for a construction program that's providing specific training industry standards, or does it have to be associated directly with the 5 areas? So construction is not an eligible YST industry area, and so in order to have transportation costs covered, it would have to be associated within the 5 industry areas that are eligible.
Can the school or other organization provide the minimum wage if the industry internship is unpaid? Is there a minimum numbers of hours for an internship? So YST paid work experiences are paid. They're not unpaid opportunities, and they have to be paid directly by the employer. So schools cannot offset those wages directly to the student. We have seen a couple models in the state where chambers of commerce pay or reimburse the employer for the funds paid or for the wages paid to the students. So the wage is still coming directly from the employer and going to the student, which is our requirement. But then the Chamber of Commerce is involved in supporting those employers and bringing students into those paid work experiences.
Yeah, the students really, oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the students need to be hired by the employer, go through the onboarding process, and be receiving wages and benefits if they're eligible for that directly from the employer, just like any other employee.
Yep, there's no minimum number of hours for the YST paid work experience. The only real restrictions that we have are the child labor law restrictions of they can't work before 5 a.m. or after 11 p.m. on a school day. This is really where local design comes into the picture. It's schools and employers working together to figure out what are the employer needs in terms of their shifts and availability. What is the school's policy in terms of, can a student who's a senior or a junior with, advanced standing or something, can they get out early or come late to school in order to do that work? So that's really a local design flexibility that's built into this programming.
The next question, so students are employees, not contracted. Yes, they need to be hired by the employer. You can't go through like, an outside, agency that, to be hired. In terms of being contracted, if that employer only has contracted folks that they work with, I guess, and maybe in that case, but they need to be hired just like any of the other employees are hired.
So there is a YST training agreement that is signed before the student starts, and it has a start date and an end date. So an employer could say, I'm going to bring the student in for 2 months. And then if they decide that they want to extend it, they can do a new training agreement and say, okay, now from this date through, whatever date they choose. So that, again, is sort of up to the employer and the school. When they're designing that process, all the way from like, how are we getting kids referred to us? Are we doing a formal interview process? How long is this experience? Is it a quarter? Is it a semester? Is it a year? Those program design components are very much up to the school and the employer to figure out what works best for them. But like Faye said, they are hired on by the employer.
Yes, and they can be limited duration employees for sure.
So the next question is, how do benefits play in for a minor? Healthcare, PTO, Minnesota paid leave, etc. They're just a regular employee, so that would be, that employer's policy in terms of what they're eligible for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if they're only working 12 hours, something like that, which most students are going to be working not full time, they may not qualify for benefits, but they can't not qualify for benefits just because they're YST. It needs to be the same policy that applies to all employees.
These are amazing questions. Are there any more questions? I'm going to scan through I can't see everyone on here. Also, I'm not sure if we accidentally mic'd you all and have muted you, or if you can unmic yourselves. All right, we have another question. The grant is supposed to be able to support the program development, but the application asks to list all your partners. Can they develop as we go? Yes, very much so. You're going to be listing the folks that you are building with in the preliminary stages on that application, but we have employers and other partners that come on, throughout the lifetime of the grant cycle to end up with a pretty robust network. That's a great question.
Yeah, many people will start with just the one or two or a few solid partners to begin with and build as they go. That's the most common way that we see programs developing.
Okay, in agriculture, there are often paid internships for the summer. Does this count as an employee? It would be depending on who the paid internship is with. If it's an employer who is hiring a student for the summer and they're, we run into this thing with like internships and paid work and like all the words kind of can get confusing. But if it's an employer who's hiring a student and paying them directly for summer work, that sounds like it's an employer partner. So they would go through the YST employer approval process and then hire students on, and their training agreement would be for that summer duration. We do ask when students in a YST program are working over the summer, there needs to be someone from the school who's available to support the student and the employer during the summer months, just in case something comes up, whether it's a challenge or something to celebrate. We ask that there be someone available from the school over the summer in order to be there.
What kind of reporting or tracking is required ongoing? So we have quarterly reports. There's 2 financial documents and then 2 performance-based outcome reports that we do require. And then we do have a midpoint meeting that we do after year 1 of the grant, and then a final closeout meeting at the end of the grant.
And that quarterly reporting is going to be numbers of students that are participating in each of those 4 YST areas. How many students are doing industry exposure that quarter? How many students are taking courses that quarter? How many are getting certificates? And then how many are working in paid work experiences? And then there's also a narrative piece where you can talk about the things that those numbers don't capture, the things that you're doing, pictures, quotes from students, testimonials, that kind of thing.
And a YST specific general ledger, that should all be also listed in our RFP.
Okay, can the healthcare employer use the reimbursement funds through the SHIP program that pays half of student wages for summer internships? I personally am not super familiar with the SHIP program. If the SHIP program is putting wages, giving funds to the healthcare employer that they can then pay students with, I think that would probably tick the box as long as that healthcare employer is paying the students. I would defer to the SHIP guidelines for how funds can be used by their requirements.
Can the grant awardee be the employer partner? Employer partners can apply. They would just have to demonstrate how they'll be able to do the grant activities with the high school course, industry-specific classes, and being able to offer high school credit. So if they do partner with a local school, they could work together as long as they're offering and demonstrating all 4 program activities.
Priority per the grant application and RFP is for applications who are first-time applicants with the school as the lead applicant, but we have had some employer partners get awarded in the past. Can a building administrator fulfill the staff role over the summer, or would it need to be the job coordinator? No, a building administrator would be fine as long as it's somebody that's making themselves available, introducing themselves, of course, and making themselves available over the summer. That would be fine. what are the success metrics for the program? So per statute, 80% of students who are eligible to graduate and are in the YST programming need to graduate, and 60% of the students who are eligible need to earn an industry's recognized credential. What you're going to be doing in your application is laying out your goals and those 4 YST components that Faye and Nemo have talked about, the exposure and the industry courses and credentials and paid work. And so you're going to be setting in this application, like how many kids in year 1 and year 2, and then overall am I aiming for, right? If you're awarded, you'll tighten that up with a work plan or a grant action plan. So you'll be sort of setting your own metric in that regard for what is success, what defines success for you in each of those 4 areas. And then that's what we'll be looking, measuring at that midpoint monitoring meeting to say, hey, this is what you thought you were going to be able to do. Let's talk about, like, this is going really well, or this is really challenging. Like, let's talk about what's happening within those goals. But per statute, it's those 2 metrics of the 80% graduating and 60% earning a industry recognized credential.
And we also see a wide variety of numbers reported for those metrics and those goals that partnerships set. Some large districts where the whole district, maybe their whole CTE is the applicant, they might have much higher numbers or consortiums than like a smaller charter school might have much smaller numbers. And it just depends on the partnership or the size of the school. So those numbers can definitely vary. The grant committee is looking for more the strength of the planning for your program overall, and not necessarily the numbers.
I would say, so that's actually the last question that's on there. We will come back to Marianne's question about schools in greater Minnesota can be pretty small. So there's a statement of need in the application, and that would be a great place to provide that context of, like, this is our student population, like this is what our community makeup looks like across a socioeconomic or racial or ethnic parameters. But that's providing the context for the folks who are reviewing it is really helpful, because, like Faye said, you're going to see some really big districts that have big numbers that are attainable, and then you're going to see smaller districts or smaller schools or charter schools or private schools that have smaller numbers. And so being able to contextualize that for the reviewer is a really helpful thing to do in your application.
Can an employer hold an IT paid work experience if the business is not primarily in an IT company? Many businesses have an IT department. Yes, IT is a unique industry area, and we've seen it across different industry areas. We would look at a job description just to make sure that it is an IT-focused position, but we've approved advanced manufacturing employers with IT departments. So, yes.
And then the next question is, can you repeat the percent of students? And I just put it up. I am actually not an auditory processor, so I need to see things. So this is that 80% of students in paid work graduate, 60% students of paid work earn an industry credential.
And then you'll be building your goals around those first 4, the exposure, the classes, the credentials, and the paid work. You'll be setting those numbers. But 5 and 6 are set in statute.
Yep. And the 3 of us do lots and lots of technical assistance. So we are happy to be involved, as folks, who become grantees are, working on things like invoicing and reporting. We're very involved in those processes. Okay, next question. At what point in the application process does the employer become involved? Is it after the approval? So you'll have to list employer partners in your application so that you're demonstrating, hey, in agriculture, these are our employer partners that are really interested in becoming a part of our YST programming. So you want to be talking to them now and talking to them about your program, talking to them a bit about YST, and hey, can we include you in this application as someone who's interested, right? Like, you don't want to be just putting down employers who, like, hopefully will come on board. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? But people who you've had conversations with. We can approve employers at any point. You know, if you have somebody and you're writing your application and you're like, oh, they actually are ready to get approved. You know, we do it all the time. We can do that, but there's no point at which they have to be approved in the application process. They have to be approved before students can be placed there for a paid work experience, and it does take usually about a month to get through that process. But in terms of involving them, I would be involving them now in those conversations about your programming and what you're wanting to do, and are they interested, on board, wanting to be involved in this process. So I would start those conversations now. Okay, the industries you choose should be based on the curriculum, not your employer partners, correct? Healthcare employer for manufacturing, maintenance training equals advanced manufacturing as the industry, not healthcare. So advanced manufacturing, like the way we see advanced manufacturing and healthcare work together is more like, Boston Scientific or Medtronic, something like that, where they're manufacturing components that are used in healthcare. Like RMS does lots and lots of tiny surgical components that they're manufacturing. I don't know that a healthcare employer like a hospital or a clinic would be a place that we would say that there's a manufacturing component in. So I could be getting a little confused there, but your industries, when you're choosing your industries for your application, you should be looking at, where, like, those 4 YST components: exposure and courses, certificates, and then employers. Like, what programming do I have that I want to expand there, or what do I really want to develop? So we get applications sort of across a continuum of where people are at in their programs. Some people use YST funds to get it started, right? Like, we need these funds in order to launch programming, to develop these components. And so maybe like the first semester or even the first year sometimes can be like prep and planning and getting it ready. And then the second year can be getting it off the ground. And then some applicants or grantees have it ready and they're like, hey, this is where we're at. This is our baseline. And this is how we want to really expand it out. So that's probably a little bit of a confusing answer, but we see a mix of where folks are at in terms of their program development and complexity.
But again, really sorry, Nima, but the one that we see a lot of placements in other industries would be IT, because they have more of a solid IT department. And that could be within any industry, really. It doesn't have to be just R5. Like, maybe it's a IT department in a school district. So as long as that's a very IT specific job. For the other areas, we're really seeing mostly that the employers are solidly in that industry area.
So the next part: if an employer has been YST approved for a previous project with other partners, does that approval carry forward for a new project? Yep. So YST employers get renewed every 3 years. So the first year that they're an employer partner, that'll be a 1-year conditional, and then after that it's every 3 years. But they don't have to be reapproved for a new school partnership. Are schools or community programs considered valid employer placements for work experiences? They can be. The school would have to hire the student on, and we would want to be talking about, like, so in IT, that's one place that we do see schools with IT departments being like, hey, we've got some skin in the game. We're going to, take Janine and she's going to be at our IT tech help desk, right? So that's actually a place that we do see schools become employer partners, but the school does have to hire the student. I'm not sure.
Maybe like if it was a school-based clinic
program,
potentially, or something like that, it could qualify under healthcare, but it really has to be very much within the industry, the job duties.
So if you choose a healthcare industry for the YST grant, can students do paid work experience in the IT department at a hospital? Okay, yes. So okay, we may need to take some of these really specific questions a little bit offline because we're getting kind of specific here, but can students do paid work experience? So we recognize that hospitals have some non-clinical occupations, right? Like health unit coordinators, um, billing and coding, and those are things that we would be working individually with our grantees on, of like, you know, if it's an IT job like computer programming or something like that, that's more in alignment with an IT industry. Like what class would that student be taking at school in order to set them up to be successful? Well, that's probably like a computer science class, like a coding or Python or Java or something like that, that they would be taking to support an IT specific position. But if it's something like health administration, we have had a lot of conversations with employer partners lately about like, what are the non-clinical healthcare roles that students could do that they're interested in doing. So there's that is a conversation that we're definitely having with employers. But if it's a really IT specific skill set, you always want to be thinking about what's the class that the kid's going to take to set them up to be successful in that job. So I would say if it's in an IT department doing computer science stuff, that would probably fall into the IT pathway and not the healthcare pathway.
And you can definitely have healthcare and IT specified as your two industries if you're offering, classes in both healthcare and IT, if you're offering credentials in healthcare and IT, and then have all of the placements be at a hospital because there's an IT department for the IT students to go to, and then there's, healthcare positions for them to go to too. That could work. You just have to think of it more as the 4 components are those offered for each industry area that you're selecting.
Okay, can the school applying also be the employer? Schools can be employers, yes, within
We have
those
seen
5 industry areas.
We have seen instances of school districts using their IT departments as placements for students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are such good questions. There's no way we can fit this all into our FAQ, so we'll have to refer people to the video because these are amazing. Really comprehensive. Are there any final questions? We have about 3 minutes left. We're excited to see these applications start rolling in. And don't hesitate to reach out. The 3 of us are available. We can't get too specific in terms of like a school's specific, like, oh, can you review what this looks like? Does this look good? Like we can't do things like that, but we can answer the types of questions like this that are specifically general. We're generally specific. These have been really, really good questions. So don't hesitate to reach out. Our contact information is here. It's also listed on the website, but we are all available. So again, the cutoff for questions is January 29th at 4 p.m. But until then, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here. Thank you all for the time. This has been really great. Yeah. Okay. Take care, y'all. The recording, we will get it over to communications today, and depending on their availability, they'll get it out as soon as we can.
Yes, thanks for attending.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end the event at noon, or not noon, 11.